Early 20th century American firearms have a place close to my heart. Much like the Civil War was a hotbed for innovation for both breech loaders and repeaters, early 20th century America provides this wonderful breeding ground for innovation, and you see it everywhere from turn of the century, pre-war, war, and post-war. I mean, you start with the Colt 1911. Some of the earliest semi-automatic sporting arms, some of the earliest military semi-automatics, the first mounted machine guns, and then of course into the more portable machine guns like the Thompson and the Bar. It's a beautiful, beautiful, wonderful era in firearms history, and of course as you progress along into those roaring 20s, you of course merge it with a pretty fascinating area in American history as well. In an era for which America is known almost internationally, you know, an era of gangsters and prohibition and bootleggers and jazz clubs and speakeasies and the mafia and all this rich history, early 20th century America. And today we are going to look at two guns from that time, not only of innovation, but also which speak to that, you know, the criminal element for which that era is so well known. Front and center, it's a model a lot of us are probably pretty familiar with. It's a Remington Model 11, although it's in a configuration that probably few of us have. As you can see, it's seen some period modifications, and those period modifications come at the hand of a pretty notorious Prohibition era Oklahoma outlaw known as Ford Bradshaw. Bradshaw, put it plainly, is not a great guy. He's lesser known than some of his contemporaries like Pretty Boy Floyd, but maybe that's not always fair. In fact, by a lot of measures, he's a more successful bank robber and criminal than Floyd ever was. He starts off in this sort of eastern Oklahoma area, known eventually, of course, to harbor lots of criminals. It's this hilly Cookson Hills area. Harbors a lot of fugitives. It's hard for lawmen to get into these, you know, hilly outdoor areas. And as he sort of spends more time there, he's actually brought up by a John Goodman, aka Kaiser Bill, who's known to be teaching a lot of troubled youth at the time about how to lead a successful life of crime. And obviously the training with Bradshaw sticks. By 1928, it's the first mention I can find of Bradshaw's name in a paper, and he's being mentioned in a murder for hire plot. By 1931, he's already served a prison stint for armed robbery and involved later beating a 17-year-old girl, rolling her out the door of his car and leaving her on her parents' front lawn. Like I said, not a great guy. From there, he's continuing to escalate. He's being involved in more bank robberies and even a murder during the course of a carjacking, opens fire on a woman driver completely unprovoked. And it's at this point, Bradshaw, with all these evil acts in mind, he's getting a little bit of swagger. He's getting a little bit of confidence, or maybe a lot of confidence. He's calling himself like the king of Cookson Hills, or maybe it's the newspapers, maybe it's both. And why shouldn't he have a little bit of swagger? He's a real smart aleck. He's real quick on the trigger, and he's not getting caught. He's continuing to do these things, and there seem to be no penalties for him. One story from one of his associates says that he would take a fast car, and with one hand on the wheel, he would drive down a road lined with trees, and with the other hand, he would take his pistol and shoot at the trees one by one as they passed and see how many he could hit. You could say Bradshaw was having a pretty good time. And it culminates in 1933. It's his most successful year to date. Towards the end of the year, he's robbing one bank for $13,000. That's over $300,000 in today's bills. And just a couple days later, he hits another bank for $11,000. Maybe he is the king of Cookson Hills after all. Admittedly, not all Ford Bradshaw's heists are quite so large. In fact, a lot of historians speculate that Bradshaw's lesser known because he makes all these small, successful robberies and leaving some of these larger, big headline, big city robberies to other criminals. Regardless, he continues to rob and murder, but it's the end of 1933, the very end, that begins to mark a change in his fortune. And it's at the end of 1933 that his partner is ambushed and killed while on his honeymoon by police. And like most stories of the day, it's a pretty spectacular story of them surrounding this rented cottage on their honeymoon, tear gas, a hail of bullets, and eventually his partner is tracked to the back of a furniture store and he perishes a week later. So it's a very long, painful death, and likely would have been painful for Bradshaw to hear as well. He's no doubt infuriated because when he hears about the death of his partner, he drives over 100 miles to his hometown of Vian, Oklahoma, and for 7 to 10 minutes goes around shooting up the town, putting lead slugs into any standing building. Now, this isn't the first time he's done this. Bradshaw's done this to towns before, but this time it's seen as retaliation for the killing of his partner. Now, why he decided to drive to his hometown, perhaps a bit of a mystery. But the message isn't so much received by the police as retaliation, but the message is received loud and clear by the townsfolk, who now realize that their hometown boy, Bradshaw, is a threat, and they cry out for his arrest. This launches an intense manhunt for Bradshaw and any of his known associates, but he remains on the lam for several months until about March 1934, because when you're the subject of that intensive a manhunt, it only takes one mistake to get caught. Bradshaw's happens March 2nd or 3rd, 1934, when he decides to stop into a roadhouse and have a drink. I mean, why not? Prohibition had ended 3 months earlier. You could do that sort of thing now. But instead of having a drink, Bradshaw really ties one on. He's there with a young lady, and he proceeds to get more and more intoxicated, eventually holding all the patrons there hostage, forcing them to have drinks with him at gunpoint, boasting about what a bad man he is, and then saying someone is going to die before he leaves that roadhouse. Unfortunately for Bradshaw, this particular roadhouse is owned by Deputy Sheriff Bill Harper. It's being operated by his brother Bob, who's inside the roadhouse at this whole time, pouring drinks for everybody, but is inside this roadhouse having a gun pointed at him by a known madman. Well, of course, it doesn't take long for someone to slip out unnoticed by the drunken criminal and raise the attention of John Law, and they quickly surround the place. Now, like most stories from this age and in period newspapers, they differ quite a bit, but most of them have Bob inside, the one pouring drinks, get the jump on Ford Bradshaw, pulls a gun on him, tells him that he disarms him, has him both collects his pistol and his bulletproof vest. He was wearing a bulletproof vest that day. And after he collects those things, law enforcement comes in and they begin to escort him out the back door of the roadhouse. Well, it's at this point Ford Bradshaw decides that's his best chance that he's going to make a break for it. He's fighting the members of law enforcement. He's wrestling with Bob Harper, to which Deputy Sheriff Bill Harper wastes no time, seeing his brother in danger, pulls his own revolver and empties it into Ford Bradshaw. 5 shots in his guts, and another one finds his shoulder. And as Ford Bradshaw falls, his final words are, "Don't do it, don't do it, don't do it." He was only 28 years old. After the fracas, police, of course, are investigating the scene. They find $100 to several $100 on Bradshaw's person, depending on which period newspaper you read. And they, of course, investigate the car that he drove up with, and several other sources again cite that they find a quantity of ammunition in there. Some sources cite a pistol, but several more sources cite, in addition to the pistol and the ammunition, 1 semi-automatic shotgun. Ladies and gentlemen, this is that semi-automatic shotgun. Now, it's this Remington Model 11. It's in what at the time was called like a Whippet configuration. And you see this same configuration for the same Model 11 also in a very famous photo after Bonnie and Clyde's ambush. In their arsenal is taken out of their car. You'll see this as well. So popular amongst criminals at the time, especially those who expect to be fleeing and fighting out of their automobiles. Now, we've already mentioned one Remington Model 11 in the Whippet configuration. How do we know that this is the one? I am pleased to say that it is documented by serial number in an affidavit, which traces it from the roadhouse to the undersheriff investigating it, who took possession of this and then sold it to a man in 1949. And it traces it, so essentially from the scene of the crime through law enforcement to its new owner. The gun even comes with documents from the funeral home detailing the bullet wounds on Bradshaw's body. It is a grisly reminder of this nearly forgotten Prohibition era Oklahoma outlaw. Second gun on the table, another classic early 20th century American firearm that a lot of us recognize already, and if you don't have one already, you'd love to have one in your collection. This, of course, Winchester Model 1895. This is a 1903 manufacture. And this one's criminal past stretches all the way back to a man who was the FBI's public enemy #1 and one-time part of the Barrow Gang. And that man is Floyd Hamilton. When I say that Floyd Hamilton was part of the Barrow Gang, that goes way back to when he and his brother Raymond Hamilton moved into the West Dallas area when Floyd Hamilton is just 12 years of age. So they know Bonnie and Clyde growing up, and they become pretty involved with them. And of course, as they all grow up together, they grow up in a life of crime together. The Hamilton brothers were so involved with the Barrow Gang that Floyd helps Bonnie and Clyde break brother Raymond out of a Texas State Penitentiary along with 4 other inmates, one of whom kills a guard along the way. Now, Raymond Hamilton, Floyd's brother, was serving 266-year sentence. Floyd Hamilton apparently didn't take the hint, and just the next year is already in newspapers for robbing banks. From that year, from 1934 on, Floyd Hamilton's life is this constant churn of crime and prison stints and robberies and daring escapes and more robberies. And it culminates about 1938 when he's listed as the FBI's public enemy #1 and his partner, Huron Ted Walters, is public enemy #2. As you can imagine, that's a lot of heat for 2 criminals, and in 1938 the 2 were apprehended and sent to Alcatraz. But it's during this stint in their public enemy era that the 2 men are ambushed on the Ladd Bridge near DeQueen, Arkansas. Again, with most of these stories, period accounts vary, but it sounds like law enforcement was expecting him over this Ladd Bridge, but they might not have been quite fully stationed yet. And so when the criminal's car approaches and pulls up to the bridge, there's some lawmen out of position. It seems like there's a little bit of confusion, but not a lot. A split second later, machine gun fire opens up on the car. A .30-30 rifle fires several shots through the windshield before it jams, and it's a hail of machine gun and pistol fire. Criminals, of course, wasting no time to that level of firepower, throw the car in reverse, back off the bridge, crank the wheel, exposing the driver's side to the gunfire. They scurry out the passenger side, jumping off the approach where the road approaches the bridge, down the banks, and into the woods to escape. Left behind in their car is most of their arsenal, although some accounts do tell of some shotgun fire being returned to the law officers, but there's a lot of ammunition in the car that's left behind, and this Winchester 1895 rifle. Now again, it's a common model, much like a Model 11, even a Whippet Model 11. There's certainly more than one, so how do we know it's this Winchester 1895? Well, because Floyd Hamilton tells us it is. He gives a very detailed note about this gun, which is then signed by 3 witnesses. It is not only detailed in its configuration, but down to its serial number. This is the Winchester 1895 that Floyd Hamilton leaves behind in his car in a hail of gunfire. Now, thankfully, Floyd Hamilton's life doesn't have quite the grisly end that Ford Bradshaw's does. The 2, as mentioned, are sent to Alcatraz in 1938. They still have a lot of bravado about them. They're saying that no jail's going to hold them, and why shouldn't they? They've certainly escaped jails and prisons before. And in 1942, they enact their plan to escape from Alcatraz, from the Rock. And it's this wonderful plan composed of, essentially, they've made a surfboard 3 inches tall that houses some dry clothes. They've fashioned some seagulls on the top which hide breathing tubes, and they paint it the color of the water. So the men are going to swim under this with tubes and escape to land. Well, of course, the plan doesn't work. They are reapprehended. They are returned to Alcatraz. And this is really where Floyd Hamilton's life turns around, because he's put in solitary confinement for 21 days with bread and water, with no light and no clothes. And in those circumstances, you probably have one of two options. You can go crazy or you can turn to Jesus. Floyd Hamilton turned his life over to Jesus. And it's this beautiful redemption arc that he has the rest of his life. He becomes a night watchman for a car dealership for 16 years. He's very trusted, very beloved. He speaks to kids, volunteers his time to help them avoid this life of crime. He's eventually pardoned, started by JFK, and of course finalized. The pardon's finalized by Johnson. He's pardoned by the governor. A beautiful story. People talk about he was, quote, like one of the best men they ever knew. And so from the very grisly end to a very positive one, they both tell two wonderful tales of criminals in this Prohibition era, two classic sporting arms, two classics of early 20th century American firearms that most of us have some version of in your collection today, but here's where collecting gets really cool, when you can find those beloved examples that have their own unique twist to it, and of course, a lot of history. Ladies and gentlemen, come to our May 16th preview day. That's Thursday, May 16th, the day before the auction. Hold this history in your hands, or any of the other hundreds of guns available in the May 17th through 19th Premier Firearms Auction. That is the same weekend is the NRA convention, also that weekend in Dallas. So come spend some time with us. Come see the beautiful facility. Come see these wonderful firearms. And of course, come see and feel the excitement of a real firearms auction. We hope to see you this May in Texas.